Triple M rocking the footy on a Saturday afternoon for you. Tony Squires, Ryan Girdler, Wade Graham and Brent Reid. We haven't spoken together as a group since the Origin side has been picked. The game obviously on Wednesday, Origin 1 here in Sydney. Ryan Girdler, you talked about the style of footy and him selecting players who could play that style. He basically has he's selected a side in his own image. Madge, would you
in his own image, Tone?
Kind of tough, hard-working, let's just straight up the guts kind of guy.
Yeah, there's certain a character the people that he's picked, and I think everyone's really excited to get behind a team with those sort of characteristics. I know everyone's looking forward to Wednesday night. There's been a few hiccups on the way through, given some of the injuries to key personnel. But I think given the players that were available, he's done a really good job of getting the guys in there, representing, a certain way that he wants them to play. And yeah, it's just exciting. I'm excited. 6 debutants. Nico's basically playing his first game as well. So it's always nice to see that blend of, the youth coming through with also that balance of experience there. I think he's done a really good job.
Yeah, I agree with Gerds. I was excited by the team. I like the team that he's picked. I know Reedy would have sat there stunned on stunned Sunday night with no Tedesco named.
Disloyalty. What about
stunned. And listen, that was always a tough decision. It was always going to be a tough decision. And whether he went Teddy, everyone would have, half the people would have went, oh, well, he can't believe he left Dylan Edwards out. And then because he's picked Dylan Edwards, it's a tough decision on Teddy. But I don't think there was a wrong decision there. Madge is just going with the style of player who he thinks can execute the plan he has in his head. And I like the forward pack and the power off the bench, so I'm excited. I think there's a few keys that New South Wales need to get right to take advantage of the players that they picked. But yeah, I'm excited. What a time of year it is.
Brilliant.
A week away.
Is there any inside info about Nicho Hynes? Obviously, there were concerns, didn't train on day one because of that calf. Looked a bit proppy, but have you heard or Reedy know what's going on inside that camp?
I haven't heard personally, but I have no doubt he would have trained by now with the team. And I was not worried at all for Nicho and that calf heading into the camp for two reasons. One, he got scanned straight away after the Sharks game and nothing new came up on that scan. So that was the first positive. And two, Andrew Gray is in there as a performance manager, and he was our head of performance at the Sharks for many years. And he's a wizard. He's a wizard in preparation and getting people right. And he would have been around those conversations with the medical teams around Nicho's scans. And he pretty much wrote the book on a lot of the modern head of performance. So everyone across the NRL basically runs a similar program that started from the stuff that Andrew Gray does. So with him overlooking training, I'm confident in all those guys getting ready for and being right for the game.
It's interesting, though, that Luke Keary's obviously been in camp with them all this week. Nicho didn't train a lot early in the week. Luke Keary did a lot of that. I wonder, after watching Parramatta last night with the way Mitchell Moses played, if Nicho's out, and this is completely left field, would you consider calling in Mitchell Moses and not playing Luke Keary?
I don't think this is completely left field because I heard Andrew John say that too on the coverage.
Okay, there you go. Well, Joey and I are thinking alike.
4 days after he's played
yes.
No, it wouldn't be 4 days because he played on the Thursday night. So it'd be a 6-day turnaround.
Yep.
Do you think?
So
that would be. It'd be harsh on Luke, right? Because Luke's been with the team since day dot. Told he's the cover for Nicho Hynes. But Mitchell Moses would have been there if he'd come back last week. Moses would have been either the 6 or the 7. I imagine he would have been the 6.
Listen, I don't think Nicho's going to be in doubt. I think he's going to play right.
I'm asking you to play hypothetically, Wado. If he's out, what would you consider doing it?
Not this late, no, because the camp's already 3-4 days in. They've had their early meetings. They're already talking about game plan stuff. They've had their walkthroughs. They're already building combinations with their back rowers. And I'm not saying that Mitch can't do that in a short turnaround because he's an experienced player. He's been in that team before. But I just think I wouldn't rock the boat too much heading into game one. But what it's done now, the way Mitch performed, because he was outstanding. That's probably the best I've seen him play.
Amazing.
And we'll get into that as we dive into that game. But what it's done is there's a pretty simple equation now for Nicho. He needs to go out there and perform and play well.
And Jerome.
They both need to go out there and do their job and get the win, because if they don't, there's a guy in the wings waiting. And
well, the thing is, there any? I mean, there's already that pressure. You're playing State of Origin, so it doesn't get any bigger. So this doesn't add to that.
It's not added pressure, not at all. Like this, it's the biggest
It's a
arena we
little
have
bit
in the
added
game.
pressure.
No,
It's a little bit. It's got to be if you've got a guy nipping at your heels, ready to
It's not,
come into
mate,
the team.
Because if you win, you're there. It's a simple equation, and they'll be looking at this. Both of those
Yeah,
guys.
but you know now that if you lose, you are gone.
Yeah, but if you lost, you're a fair chance of going anyway. Like
Yeah.
that's the nature of the beast in Origin, right? If you lose, you don't, and it's hard, but it's performance based. It's a hard team to get into, and I just think for them two guys, that they'll be excited. And this is just an opportunity for them. Like, they have an opportunity to go into this series, win here in Sydney, and then take it to Melbourne, and an opportunity down there if they get the job done.
Wado, with respect to what you just said about who they've got in the performance and heading up performance and the experience that they have, it's still a concern for me the fact that we've got a guy that's going into basically his first Origin game on the back of coming off in his last club game and then not being able to train early on in the week, and the fact that they're carrying Luke Keary in case he pulls out potentially earlier in the week, and then later in the week if he's sort of given the go ahead. Burton and Keary are basically left out of the 17, and then we don't take any cover into the actual contest for Nico. And I know and you well know as well as anyone that soft tissue injuries. You can train as much as you like, you can get as much load into them, but once you get out on the field, it's a totally different environment. And it's not a club environment, it's not an NRL environment, it's actually a state of origin environment. And, you need to make sure that you're 100% with those sort of injuries if you're going to go into a contest like that. And to not have any cover on the bench, to leave, Burton out of the 18, to actually leave Keary out of the 18 and just go on with no cover for the halves, I think it's a massive risk. It's really the only concern I have for New South Wales and what Madge has done. And I wouldn't be against him trying to find a spot there for Burton on that in the 17. We've seen that Queensland have done that with Cobbo. The chance of an outside back or a half getting injured or having an issue in a contest these days is highly likely. And the fact that we really don't have, we have Isaiah Yeo that's played a little bit of centre and wing when he was coming through, but gee, that was a long time ago. We don't really have cover for the outside backs.
Hudson Young's the guy.
Edge back rowers out there, and we don't have cover for the halves.
Hudson Young's the guy who'll cover them in the outside backs, because when Madge was at Canberra, Hudson Young used to occasionally train the centres in preparation for this sort of thing happening. But I mean, you're right. Yeah. He's not a Cobbo or someone like that who's natural in that position. I mean, he'd be a duck out of water basically playing in the centres, I'd imagine.
Yeah, well, Queensland have hedged their bets in that area because they've looked at the data and say in the last however many games they've lost a player either to HIA or injury. So they've put the outside back on the bench to cover that outside back position. But if there's an HIA, they've got Felice Kafusi there who's an experienced forward who you can activate and who can just come on and play anywhere in the forwards,
Only if it's foul play, though.
No, isn't it
not straight away?
Concussion protocol?
Not straight. Not the first one. Yeah, you got two. Yeah.
Well, I think if you look at the last couple of games, there's probably been more than two in each team. So that's just how brutal the Origin arena is, and they've hedged their bets that if they need to go down that road, they got a forward there who they can activate. And on the other side of it, that's the risk. Good. So that New South Wales hasn't opted for that. That player, that outside back, that cover, which Burton does so well, but they're backing themselves to get through the game unscathed.
It's funny that the sides point to a completely contrasting style of game between these two sides. They're contrasting coaches in many respects. Like Billy's got a bit more, not so much in the way he deals with the media or the way he's outwardly, but he's obviously a bit more flair about the way he played the game and views the game. People talk about Billy being this. Having this genius mind when it comes to football. And Madge, you're right, it's a bit more straight down the line, straight through the middle of it. And that's the way I imagine this game's going to be played. I don't know, you blokes should know better than me, but it would appear New South Wales just going to try and go straight through the middle of them, bang down the front door, as we always say, whilst Queensland might look to be a bit more expansive.
Well, I think New South Wales definitely need to play off the front foot because they've got halves that are used to playing off the front foot and haven't really been in that environment where, they're always kicking out of their own 20 or 30. So I think that's why New South Wales have gone for guys like big outside five that are going to get them upfield, because when you look at the ball runners in the middle of the field, we know what Payne's going to do. But Jake, traditionally not a great ball runner. Like those days are probably a little bit behind him. McGuinness is the same. He's a smaller body. He's going to be able to get between defenders and maybe get quick play of the balls. But if our outside five are going to be heavily relied on to get us up over halfway, so then these halves can actually, do some attacking kicks, and we can use guys like Suali'i and Lomax in the air. But if we're playing out of our own end, which Origin is a lot, it's really going to be difficult, because when you look at the Queensland side, they've got guys that work really hard, that really good lateral movement, get across the ground really well. They mightn't be as big in stature now that they've obviously got no Tino and no Flegler, but they've got guys that play big minutes, and I think that's what allows them to put a guy like Selwyn Cobbo on the bench, because Cotter and Collins and Sewer and Nanai and Carrigan, these guys play big minutes at club level, and Billy's probably going to ask for the same sort of performance from at this level. And they're going to try and find a way to combat New South Wales that way. But it's a big ask for the outside backs of New South Wales who have got that mindset. And I also believe that's why they probably went for Suali'i over Latrell, because it's a mindset thing. Like Latrell comes into a game like that, doing obviously whatever he needs to for the team, but with a conversion mindset. If I'm playing in the centres, I want to get over it. Hamaso, I want to try and convert opportunities when we get up there into the field. He probably doesn't think it about bringing it out from the backfield, whereas Suali'i and Crichton and those guys are going to go in that mindset of, I just need to do the work out of the backfield for my team to make sure I build some sort of platform. So you can see what he's trying to do, Madge. I just hope they can execute it.
We talk quickly about leadership at Origin level. I mean, Jake Trbojevic has been chosen as captain, and we all know, nice guy and all that. But we see that players want to play with him. He's that kind of guy. What will he bring to the table?
Oh, he's good. He's passionate to start with. I think it's underrated. He's passionate, and I know probably the nice guy takes away from how competitive he is on the field. He has the respect of all the players, certainly in the game, and to be fair, he just needs to keep that calm head and relay the game plan message and just keep the players on point. At Origin, you're filled with many great leaders. Like Isaiah Yo's in the team, McInnes is in the team. Yep. There's plenty of guys around him who will take care of their own job and look after the people around him. But he's just got to keep that level head. And certainly, I think everyone in that team has enough respect for Jake that when he says something, they will listen to him, and he'll be a good point. It's chaos out there at times, but he'll be a good point of reference just to center yourself when you need to, because you do need to have those moments where you do take a breath and pull it back together and remember which way you're going, because it can be frantic out there at times, the pace that Origin's played at.
Reedy, your colleague Dean Ritchie says there's not enough hate going on. He wants to bring it back.
Tell Spencer Leniu that. I think there's enough blokes in Origin that Queenslanders hate. I don't think there's any doubt. There's not a lot of love for a guy like Jerome Luai. There's not a lot of love for Spencer Leniu. I think there's still guys out there that both states are not particularly fond of. And I imagine when Spencer Leniu comes on the field and Paddy Carrigan and those blokes who are tight with Ezra Mam see him run on, you'll see a bit of angst, I reckon. And Spencer's not the sort of guy to back away from that. He's aggressive. He's fiery. I mean, there's an edge to Spencer. So, I don't know.
I think like the way you want to say hate, like there's genuine rivalry.
Yeah.
Just because they can't go out there and fight in that anymore doesn't mean it's any less demanding. Like it is brutal, mate. An Origin game was brutal when Gerds played. It was brutal when I played, and it's getting even more brutal the way these players have turned into athletes, how powerful and strong they are. Like we only need to look at that game up at Suncorp a couple of years ago. The first 10 minutes, it was like 4 blokes knocked out.
I would say the difference now is when Gal was around, Gal used to say some outrageous stuff just to fire it up.
He was getting paid.
He's getting a sling for it, right? That's what's probably you miss these days. You don't see and hear a lot of that stuff these days. I think it's still on the field. You still have the aggression and the anger and the hatred, but you don't get it. It's not as obvious off the field.
It's not as personal.
You don't have players speaking so openly about how much they despise each other.
You want Spud and Chief and all that sort of carry on. And those days, they're over. I mean, you just don't have those guys anymore, those personalities that can. And these guys know that, saying saying a lot of, things away from the game about the game just puts pressure on their team, puts pressure on them as individuals. And there's just so much of that these days, there's so much pressure on these guys.
And the other thing is, Gertz, the coaches, you want to... There's two coaches there who would hate that to happen. They would hate their players. Madge, we all know what Madge is like.
Right.
I mean, Madge just wants to go about his business without any drama. Billy's actually a lot like that as well. You won't see a negative story in a Queensland newspaper about the Queensland team because Billy doesn't like it.
Well, you saw, was it Carrigan get interviewed the other day and talk about how much respect he had for Spencer and things like that, So they're obviously already been told that, they need to cool it in relation to trying to engage with the opposition just to put extra pressure on. So unfortunately, I think that kind of part of the game's almost moved on, but the environment itself just creates the energy and the intensity of it. And I don't think maybe the build-up suffers just a little bit, but I think the contest is just the same as it's always been.
Reedy, I'm not sure whether it's a rugby league decision or a geopolitical decision, but it seems set in concrete that shortly we will be told that PNG will become the 18th NRL team.
Well, it's heading down that path, Tone. We had a story this week that they were hoping to make an announcement maybe as early as July. There'd been talk about September, but we were being told potentially as early as July on expansion of PNG and them entering the competition in 2028. Subsequently spoken to Peter V'landys, or a colleague has, and Pete said it's a bit premature yet. Hasn't gone to Cabinet, hasn't gone to the ARO Commission for rubber stamping, but I think it's a fait accompli. I think at some point in coming weeks or months there will be an announcement made and we will have a team in PNG probably from 2028.
Playing out of Port Moresby?
Playing out of Port Moresby with a big fat cheque for $600 million sitting in the ARO Commission's back pocket.
$600 million over 10 years.
Over 10 years, yeah.
And we spoke to Andrew Abdo about it a couple of weeks ago in Magic Round. He said it was strategically it was about the Pacific. It wasn't just about PNG. So it's a move. But it clearly is also a political move from Anthony Albanese in the government in terms of continuing that friendship with PNG in the light of others in the region also holding their hand
So
out.
a large chunk of that, so half of that, about roughly half of that 600 million will go towards the Pacific region and fostering rugby league and education amongst not just PNG but Fiji, Samoa, the Pacific countries. The other half, or about half, will go towards the football team for when they come in 2028. So it'll go towards making sure they're financial and they run properly, and that's the way the money will be divided. And then there'll be a chunk of it, about $50-60 million is the plan at the moment, that will go to the existing clubs as a sweetener to get their support for expansion to PNG. So you work it out, $60 million amongst 17 clubs, about $3.5 million each.
Right. How does it work in terms of, we know that the people of Papua New Guinea love rugby league. We're here with Prime Minister's games.
Yeah.
It's quite amazing. And we know that there's a great talent pool that's sprinkled amongst the NRL as we speak of guys from PNG. If they're playing out of Port Moresby, there have to be, let's just be honest, it's a place where, how are you going to attract rugby league players, young guys, maybe with families, to say you're now upping and heading to PNG, and that's where you're going to be living for the next 5 years?
Well, look, obviously, if they announce it early enough, they can start setting up those pathways in PNG to make sure there's some representation out of PNG. There's some players out of PNG.
Yep.
Now, you've got to supplement that with NRL players. The idea is, or the idea that's been put forward is there will be tax incentives in PNG for footballers to go to Papua New Guinea, and they would pay less tax, and they would pay playing in the NRL in Australia. Now
we do a radio show out of there.
Well, exactly.
Get the same
but I mean,
exemptions.
the tax rates are lower in New Zealand, so this isn't
Something new.
It's something new, right?
Yeah.
And tax rates are lower and if you look at American sport, the tax rates differentiate across all the states in America. I mean, I think that's why a lot of golfers go and live in Florida because the tax rates are so much lower in Texas. So, yeah, I'm not sure how significantly lower. I would imagine they would need to be significantly lower to convince players to go to Papua New Guinea, but it looks as though that's the path they will head down to get convince players to uproot and play out of PNG.
And in terms of, it's not easy to talk about, but there was security.
Yeah.
There's always security concerns.
Well, this is the compound, right?
Yeah, this is the compound. So they're building the gated community. Is that what's going to happen?
I think that's one of the things they're still flushing out, Tone, as to how that would be financed, because I don't think the NRL necessarily wants that to come out of their $600 million. I think they'd prefer the PNG government's got to stump some cash up for this as well. Maybe that's where that's paid for. Maybe the PNG government covers that part of this whole saga. Maybe they cover the compound costs. So that's one of the things I think they're still working out, and they're still going to work out before they announce it potentially.
Are we happy with that there is a hint of politics in this, or do you think the decision should be made purely on rugby league?
Well, I think we can't hide away from the fact that there is political reasons behind it. I understand that, you've got to understand how much of an influence sport has in the community, positive influence. Yep. You put that as rugby league in PNG, times that by 10 because they're fanatical about our game. So, and I get it, and it's a great influx of money for the game too. That can be spread around.
It's once in a lifetime money.
Yeah, that can be spread around to grow the game. So I understand all that sentiment, but logistically, it's just going to be really, really hard to attract players to go over there. Now, if we rewind time, after 2016, like after we'd won the comp, if I came off contract at 26 years old, I had my partner then was pregnant with our first child. What would they have to offer someone like me to leave my club, that family situation, to go to the club? Like it would have to be almost double what I would be offered at the Sharks, and it'd have to be almost those other incentives would have to be massive, because even if there was a compound over there that housed all the players and the families together, I'd probably still want my family to be based in Australia. I'd want my wife and my schooling to be here in Australia. I'd have to consider maybe flying away and just playing and being a professional over there and visiting my family over here in Australia when I could, because it's not that big of a trip, but it's a consideration you have to weigh up. And I certainly can't speak for every player. I'm just speaking in my opinion and what my circumstance was at that time. I would find it amazingly difficult to go and play and base myself in PNG. There's going to be different circumstances for every player, but there needs to be some incentives and logistical issues sorted out for this to be a success.
Gerds, what are your thoughts?
The last thing the game needs is a floundering franchise, Tony.
Yep.
I know $680 million isn't to be sneezed at, but there's some other really good bids out there with some, I'm sure there's going to be some finances and some involved as well. But the last thing we want is to grab the cash and then all of a sudden find us in a situation where we can't get any marquee players over there, and all of a sudden you've got a franchise that really doesn't work. We've seen that happen in the Super League where some franchises don't work, the infrastructure's not put in place. It's a massive job. I've been over there a couple of times for different reasons. It's a total different way of living. It's definitely going to attract some people. I saw through the week that a lot of the guys that actually have some heritage or some lineage through PNG were asked whether they would go back, and none of them sort of said that they would, which was a little bit of a concern for me. So I hope the game thinks they've obviously, they've enjoyed looking at the check and the money coming into the game, but there's obviously going to be some difficult moments that come with that. And the last thing we want, as I said, is a floundering franchise when there's so many other good bidders out there that, with the right intentions, to come in and really make a statement like the Dolphins have done, like the Melbourne Storm have done. Do it right.
Yeah.
Well, we're not shutting the door on them, because they'll go to 20, and they may announce, when they announce PNG, they may announce a roadmap to 20 teams.
Perth Bears.
Perth Bears, every chance, Tony.
Yeah.